We'll see how to create a virtual machine. These machines eventually would be your clustered machines, alpha and beta. The first machine that I'm going to create would be an alpha machine. I'm not going to create the second one. I will clone the first one and do the necessary config changes. Uh, it's up to you how you want to take up your configuration. Either create two separate machines, you can configure them in parallel, or create one and do a clone of it. After a clone, there would be a couple of changes required in your configuration. So I'm connected to VMware vSphere and I highlight my group here. From the pop-up menu, I'm selecting new virtual machine of the type custom, giving the machine name as SL Alpha. You also follow the same naming convention, your initials hyphen alpha. It's asking me which of the data stores I would like to keep my machine. You can select any one of the two. I'm selecting RAC data. You might select the local disk as well. I would rather urge a couple of people to select a local data store which has 3.97 TB disk space free. The other data store has 2 TB free. So I'm selecting the first one. You do a mix and match, so all the disks are effectively utilized. It's asking me about which virtual machine version I would like to select. The default configuration is virtual machine version 8. I'm sticking to that. It's asking me about the guest operating system type. In my case, it's Linux, and from the drop down list, I'm selecting Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5 64-bit. It's asking me how many virtual CPU sockets I have, and for every CPU socket how many virtual CPU cores I have. I'm keeping it to 1. Next is the amount of RAM configured for my machine, 2 GB. Now this is an important question here. When you created your DNS machine, you kept one NIC because there was no requirement for more than one NICs. For your alpha and beta nodes, you would need a minimum of two NICs, one for public network, another for private network. So how many NICs do you want? I want two. You can select, you can see here now, NIC 1 and NIC 2, and both are connected on power on. No changes beyond selecting two NICs on the screen. It's asking you about the SCSI controller type that you would like to have. For depending on your operating system selection, a default selection would already be would have been made on this screen, which is LSI logic parallel. Stick to that configuration. Next is create a new virtual disk. I would eventually install an operating system in this virtual machine, which would require a virtual disk to be created. So I'm selecting create a new virtual disk. I'm keeping the disk size as 80 GB, and most importantly, you must select thin provisioning. Go to the next screen. It's asking where the disk is attached. It is attached to the SCSI controller 1 target 0. That's the only target you have. No need to change anything here on this screen. It shows you the summary of your virtual machine configuration. Click the edit virtual machine settings before completion checkbox and say continue. The only hardware that I don't want in my virtual machine is the floppy drive. So highlight the floppy drive and remove it from your configuration and hit the finish button. So here's my machine, SL Alpha. Power it on, right click on the machine and say power on. The icon would change to a play button kind of an icon. Open console by right clicking, and from the pop-up menu select the open console menu item. You will see that the machine is trying to boot from the TFTP server. At this point in time, highlight the CD icon, CD DVD drive 1, and select connect to ISO image on a data store. Now those who would be on this machine, the data store is located in the disk Big Micro Local 7 TB OS ISOs. The ISO image you need to select is Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5.4 64-bit DVD.iso. Once you select this, it's not going to proceed further. You can check the mouse pointer that I have is still like a finger pointing somewhere. Click inside that black window inside your virtual machine and click escape button once. And wait until if it is trying to boot from DHCP, press escape one more time. Since there are two NICs, it will attempt to boot from TFTP server using both the NICs. So escape two times. Once you see the message operating system not found, hit the enter button. Now it will boot from the ISO image that you have provided in your virtual CD-ROM. It's waiting for you on the boot menu. Hit enter one more time. Now it would launch the Anaconda installer, which is the Linux native program which helps you do the Linux operating system installation. It will ask you to do a media check, which is not required. So I'm going to hit the skip button. So it's asking me to do a media test. I'm skipping the media test. And now it's launching the Anaconda installer. It takes me to the first welcome screen. It asks me about the language selection. Default is English. Next it asks you about the keyboard layout, which is US English keyboard layout. It asks you about the installation key. It is 6 times 0 E900007FC00. Next it prompts you that the only hard disk you have, which is of 80 GB, would you like to initialize it? And initializing a hard disk would erase all the data on it, which is okay. As of now there's nothing there onto that hard disk. By default it suggests you to remove Linux partitions on the selected drive and create a default layout to which you would not agree, and you would select a create custom layout. Go to the next screen. The entire 80 GB virtual hard disk that you see here is shown as a gray rectangular box is currently empty. Click the new button to create a root partition. So mention the mount point as root, file system type as ext3, and the partition size as 12,000 MB, which is roughly 12 GB. Click the new button one more time. Nothing to be selected under the mount point this time. From the file system type, select swap. Make swap as 3 GB. Hit the new button one more time and give the rest of the disk space to a new mount point called as U002. This would be the location where you would install all your Oracle softwares, including the grid infrastructure software and the Oracle RDBMS software binaries. This time select, however, fill to maximum allowable size, which means whatever is the disk space remaining, allocate that entire disk space to the new mount point U002. Now you can see the entire disk space has been consumed. Hit the next button. There's no selection to be done on the bootloader screen. By default, Linux installs the Grand Unified Bootloader on the first installed hard disk, which is named as dev SDA in the boot sector. No selections to be changed here. Go to the next screen. Now you can see there are two NICs. The NICs are ETH0 and ETH1. You must highlight both of them, saying both should be activated after boot. As of now, you can see both the NICs would attempt to get an IP address from the DHCP server. You do not want to assign IP addresses from the DHCP server. Each one of you has already been allocated a set of IP addresses for public as well as for private network. ETH0 in our case would work as a public network, and you already have a public IP series allocated for this purpose. I click on edit. It allows me to change the IP addresses. By default, it's dynamic IP configuration. Change it to manual configuration and assign the IP address, which would be 172.168.200.2 for alpha. The net mask is 255.255.0.0. Deselect the button enable IPv6 support. We do not want IP version 6. Click OK. Now instead of DHCP, you can see the manually allocated IP address to alpha, which is the public IP address of alpha 172.168.200.2. Highlight the other NIC and click the edit button. Assign the manually the IP address which is from 192 series, which is for private network 192.168.200.2. The subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. Select or uncheck enable IPv6 support. So public IP addresses are of the series 172, private IP addresses are of the series 192. Assign the host name for your machine, which would be your initials -alpha.oracleexpert.com. Remember, I have often seen people doing a typing mistake while typing the domain name. You have to use the same domain name that you have configured in the DNS. And in the DNS, you have configured it as ORACLEXPERT. For the gateway, assign the gateway IP address as 172.168.3.254 and your primary DNS as 172.168 your series.1. That's your DNS server. No need to assign any secondary DNS. Click the next screen, highlight on the global map the location where India is located. Once it is zoomed in, select Asia Calcutta. You will see here the time zone selected for this machine now shows up as Asia Calcutta. Keep the same password for all the machines so that you don't have to spend time recollecting your passwords. I kept the root password as welcome1, and I would urge every one of you to keep the password as welcome1. Very important screen. You can easily screw up your machine's configuration if virtualization is selected. Deselect it categorically here and select software development, web server, and hit the customize now radio button. Go to the next screen. Here on the left hand side you will see the software categories, and on the right hand side you will see the software groups. So select the category, click once in the group, press Ctrl A, right click, select all optional packages. Similar way, select applications from the categories list. From the software groups, highlight one item, press Ctrl A, right click, select all optional packages. Do it for all other categories except virtualization and languages. Once done, go to the next button. Remember, I didn't select anything from virtualization and languages. It will evaluate the software dependency amongst the packages that I have selected. If there are any dependent packages that I didn't select, it will automatically include them in the installation list. Once you are on this screen, hit the next button and it will automatically start formatting the disk with 3 file systems: root, swap, and U002. Once that is done, it will transfer the install image to your hard disk under the root partition, and it will start copying all the RPMs from the installable media, the CD ISO that you have selected earlier. It will start dumping them onto your hard disk. Once all the packages are installed, towards the very end of the installation, it will populate the boot sector, that is Grand Unified Bootloader will be copied to the first 512 bytes of the first bootable disk, which in our case is dev SDA. The bootloader program would help you subsequently boot that machine. If there is a boot sector corruption, your machine will not be able to boot next time, which is automatically taken care at the end of the installation. Now once it starts doing the installation, There is no point watching this progress bar go from 1 to 100. So I'm going to put a small pause on this video. Once the installation is done, you would see this screen where it asks you to reboot the machine by ejecting the media. Since ours is a virtual media, we need not worry about that one. Just hit the reboot button. Once my machine reboots, it would take me through the first boot questionnaire. So a couple of things, pending items, will answer all the questions for first boot. Then we'll ensure etc host is properly configured. Host names everywhere reflecting is correct. We'll install the missing RPM libaio development libraries, both 32-bit and 64-bit. After which we'll do the VMware tools installation so that your mouse, keyboard and the display can be resized appropriately. I have to agree this license agreement, disable the firewall. Security enhanced feature needs to be disabled. No need to enable kernel dumps. Ensure that the date showing is correct. I am selecting no, I prefer to register my copy at a later time with the Red Hat Enterprise Network. It says, do you want to create an user? No, as of now. No need to configure sound card or any additional CDs. So the first thing I am going to ensure is whether or not my etc host file has correct entries, which most of the time it will not have. Then I would install libaio development libraries, both 32-bit as well as 64-bit. Then I would install VMware tools. Then I would create oinstall and DBA groups. Then I would create user Oracle. I will shut down unwanted services, daemons to be precise, so that they don't start up in the subsequent boot. This is to make my machine feel a little lighter when it tries to boot every time. Instead of starting all unwanted daemons, I would only restrict it to some of the required services only, so that my CPU utilization, boot time, memory can all be saved. Once I am here, I am logging in as root. The first thing I would like to correct is my etc host file. Delete the IPv6 entry and put in your public IP address. Remove that host name from the first line. So ideally your etc host should have only two lines. 127.0.0.1 localhost.local domain space localhost, and 172.168.200.2, which is the IP address of my alpha machine, followed by the FQDN, fully qualified domain name of my machine, slalpha.oracleexpert.com, space the short name of my machine, slalpha. Next, I am going to install the libaio development libraries. For this, I click on the CD icon and select connect to ISO image on data store. I select the same CD. It would be auto mounted. Check with df-h where it is mounted. It's mounted under media, RHEL underscore 5.4 space x86 underscore 64 space DVD. Go to a folder named server. I'm already there now. Install libaio development libraries, both 32-bit and 64-bit. Once done, return to your home folder, which is /root in my case. On your desktop, the CD icon, click eject. Once the CD is removed, next thing is to install VMware tools. Click the VM menu. From the guest, select install /upgrade VMware tools. See where you are. You should be in your home directory. See where the CD got mounted. It's mounted under media VMware tools. Now issue gunzip /media /VMware tools /VMware tools -86562162.164 tar.gz followed by pipe tar-xf-. This will create a folder in your present working directory, VMware tools distrib. Go there and run the Perl script vmware-install.pl. You need not worry about the question. Keep on pressing enter for every question that it asks you. Momentarily it would resize your display. And that's pretty much about your VMware tools installation. Just to ensure that things are working, just log out as from your root session and you would see your display is resized now. Log in as root. Open the terminal. Verify your IP addresses. ETH0 is my public IP, public NIC. So the IP address to it should be 172.168.200.2. Validate that the net mask is showing you the correct value. Similar way, validate the IP address of your private NIC, which in our case is ETH1. The IP address 192.168.200.2 and the subnet mask as 255.255.255.0. So this means it looks correct. Next thing is to add the necessary groups and user. Group add o install, group add dba, user add -g o install -G dba. The name of the user account is Oracle. Set the password for Oracle user. Keep it simple. That's it. So I created group o install, group dba. Later on I created user Oracle whose primary group is oinstall, secondary group membership is with DBA. Last I assigned a password to the Oracle user. Validate that it all looks good by saying ID Oracle. So user ID Oracle with UID 500 with the primary group membership of oinstall and secondary group membership of DBA has been created. Clear? I'm looking at my checklist. All these items have been taken care. Last is to shut down all unwanted services. Say system config services. System-config services. It would launch you this tool. Very first thing, from edit run level, select run level all, and then deselect the ones that we don't need. You don't want ACPID, you don't want anachron, which is for cron jobs when your machine is down. You don't want ARP tables, you don't want audit, AutoFS, Avahi daemon, which is a backup daemon. So deselect all of them. No Bluetooth, no CPU speed, no common Unix printing system cups, no first boot, no GPM, no HAL daemon, no HIDD, no HP lip, no IPv6 tables, no IPMI, no IP tables, no IRQ balance, no ISCSI ID, no ISDN, but I have categorically kept ISCSI service. No LM sensors, no LVM2 monitors, no MCS trans or MD monitors, no message bus, no microcode control, no PCSCD, no raw devices, no read ahead, no read later, no restore conditional, no Red Hat network support, no RPC GSSD, RPC ID mapd, no sendmail, no troubleshoot, no UUID, no YUMS update. Once all of them have been turned off, don't forget to click the save button. That's it. The machine is now ready. I will quickly sanity check. Hostname shows me the correct hostname. All the services have been turned off, the ones that I don't want. So machine is ready to be replicated. So halt this machine. Wait for that icon to turn something like the other icon. Once it has been completely powered off, right click on your machine and say clone. Give the name as SL beta, your initials -beta. Go to the next screen. You must select appropriately your server. My server is 172.168.6.43. Else your alpha would be on some other machine and beta might be on some other physical host. Don't do that. Click the correct group under which you would like to create this machine. From the same format as source, categorically select thin provisioning. Now my first machine was on this data store. Just to load balance, I am creating my second machine on the other data source. So where all the disk will be effectively used. Go to the next screen. Nothing to be done here. Say finish. It says 8% of the clone is being done. So I need to wait until entire machine has been cloned with an alternate name here. You can see the machine is already created. Now it's copying the disk and everything. So SL beta effectively is a copy of SL alpha. So once that entire clone procedure is done, as of now it's at 13%. Once that is done, I will power it on. Once the machine is powered on, I will change all SL alpha identity to SL beta, including the IP addresses, the host name, the etc host file entries, so on. There's no point waiting for this to go to 100%. I'm pausing it now. So once it reports that the clone of your virtual machine has completed, right click on your beta machine and power on. Before I forget, uh, both for alpha machine, click edit settings, go to options, go to VMware tools, and without fail select these two check boxes. One is check and upgrade VMware tools during power cycling. Second one is to synchronize the time of your virtual machine with that of the host. This will ensure that alpha and beta at any point in time will show you the same clock time. Otherwise, they might drift away from each other. So alpha might show you some different time and beta might show you some other time. Same way do it for beta. Go to the options tab, click VMware tools, select these check boxes. Now the first time after the clone, I am powering on the beta machine. I'm opening the console. Now this is an important discussion. How would you change the machine from alpha to beta? So everywhere, wherever you have the traces of the machine name being alpha, you need to change it to all beta. Similar way, all IP addresses of alpha need to be translated to all equivalent IP addresses for beta. You need to remember the procedure because categorically we are not creating the third machine gamma. तो अब यहां पर लगता है कि मुझे सब आ गया. 2-3 वीक के बाद में हम गामा मशीन क्रिएट करेंगे. अगेन बैक टू स्क्वायर जीरो. क्या सिलेक्ट करते थे यार? थिन था कि थिक था? एक निक था या दो था? आईपी एड्रेस यहां देना पड़ता है या वहां देना पड़ता है? क्लियर? एनीवेज इन रियल लाइफ यू वोंट बी डूइंग इट, बट बिलीव मी नोबडी विल deny you, decline you a job just because you know additionally Linux administration. Launch system config network. इतना बड़ा लिखने से अच्छा है नीट टाइप करो. system-config-network. Since it's a clone, the first thing, all NICs are reportedly created with a backup NIC. First deactivate all of them. You see all of them are now reportedly showing as inactive. Highlight the one that has eth0.bak, click delete. Highlight the one that is eth1.bak, click delete. Done. Now edit eth0 NIC, which in our case would be a public NIC. Statically assign an IP address 172.168.200.4, 255.255.0.0. The gateway IP address as 172.168.3.254. Just for your confirmation, go to the hardware device tab and hit the probe button once. This gives you the MAC address. Click the second NIC, hit the edit button, statically configure the IP address as 192.168.200.4, subnet mask as 255.255.255.0. Remember, private networks are non-routable networks, which means gateway need not be assigned for private networks. So gateway, keep it as blank. Click on the hardware device tab, click the probe button, say OK. Once done, say activate. Say activate. So both the NICs are active now. Click on the DNS tab. Is this machine's identity the correct one? Change it to SL beta. Is this primary DNS correct? It should be pointing to your DNS, and your DNS IP address was .1. Remove everything from secondary, tertiary DNS, so on and so forth. In the host file, is this correct? No. You can edit it here itself. What should be the IP address? 4, and the name should be beta. The short name should be beta. Save the configuration. Validate your etc host. Doesn't seems like it has reflected yet. If it takes some time, you can always edit it manually even. Validate your etc host file. Looks okay. Additionally, I kept the IP address of beta as well, which is okay. Validate your host name. Looks good. Validate the IP address for ETH0. Looks good. Validate the IP address of your ETH1, which is your private network, and it also looks good. Clear? df-h, you have a mount point now of U002, which is roughly 60 GB free, where you would install the grid infrastructure and the Oracle RDBMS server software. Both the machines are ready. Halt it. So we are ready for tomorrow's grid infrastructure software installation. So I have two machines configured just with the OS as of now.